Are you Susan?
Yes.
I was hearing about you this morning.
I'll make sure it's moving. I don't see it moving. Yeah, it's recording. Okay. My name's Harold Swifty Shaver, and I'm one of the administrators here at the museum. And this is the opening of our new exhibit in the middle called Waterways, Cheat Lake, Cheat River, Monongahela River, and Deckers Creek. And the fellow who created this is going to be introduced to you later. And also, this, of course, is Andy Ice Horton. And she's going to speak to you, of course, about the Ices Ferry and that. So you're on.
All right, thank you. I am Andy Ice, an American patriot. I was born in 1757, 200 years before my great-great-great-granddaughter, Andy Ice, who stands before you. We've had dozens of Andy Ices in my family through the years, but I'd say that she is the first one that turned out to be female. It is nice that Andy and her Fred, a descendant of my Colonel Zach Morgan, live less than a mile, as the crow flies, from where I grew up on Cheat River. Our Ice family, along with her Fred's ancestors, the Morgans and the Pierponts, were all among the first settlers of the area. My daddy, Frederick, a Dutchman educated in Germany, came to America in about 1710 and settled on the south branch of the Potomac. He started a family and lived a good life in a growing settlement. But one day in 1745, while he and some of the other men were out getting supplies, some natives came and destroyed my daddy's life, killing daddy's wife Mary and taking 3 of my children, of my daddy's children, as hostages. We learned later that his daughter Mary stayed with the natives and was the mother of famous Indian chief Tecumseh. His son Billy got away from the Indians after a few years and was known as Indian Billy for the rest of his life. Daddy Ice searched for many years for his kidnapped children. He never did reunite with Mary, but he and Billy did eventually reunite. Daddy Ice married Eleanor, my mama, in 1752, and after my brother Abram and I were born, we headed over the mountains to the Cheat River, to lands Daddy had seen while searching for his lost children. Once we got to the Cheat River, we settled down on an island and built ourselves a little community. It was the first settlement in Virginia, west of the Alleghenies. My baby brother Adam was born shortly after we arrived at the Cheat, on August 5th, 1767, 190 years to the day before the current Andy Ice. He was quite proud of that all of his life, being the first white child born west of the Allegheny Mountains, that is. We built a fine life in our growing, bustling community of Ices Ford on the Cheat River. Daddy was a millwright as well as an excellent farmer. He fashioned millstones from the sandstone that was available in the river valley and soon had a grist mill in operation. A couple of his millstones are there now beside the new Ices Ferry Bridge across what is now Cheat Lake, just downstream from our island. Daddy always insisted that when the men from our settlement went into the woods to work, they take the women and children with them and to always have a gun. He had lost his family once, and he knew that if the men had been there, the natives would never have attacked. He wasn't going to let it happen again, and we were never troubled by the natives. During the year 1769, Daddy Ice helped John Pierpont construct Fort Pierpont. This was a small stockade fort located about 2 miles southwest of our Cheat River settlement. It is noted nowadays by a historic marker at the intersection of Canyon Road and Cheat Road. And with the start of the Revolutionary War, Daddy provided materials and meal from his grist mill to help supply the needs at Prickett's Fort. This fort, built in 1774, was located just north of present-day Fairmont. Following in our daddy's footsteps to help with America's freedom, my brother Adam and I went off a few times to help with the war against England, even though Adam was just in his teens. I didn't go full-time soldier, but I soldiered off and on to assure a bit of a pension later. I served in the Virginia troops under Captain Owen Davey, Colonel Zach Morgan, and Colonel John Evans. I was out against the Indians in the Northwest, and then later a couple months under Captain Jacob Prickett at Scotts Hill and Captain Warman at Harrison's Fort. A few years later, my son Jesse also followed our footsteps and served as a colonel in the War of 1812. Daddy Ice was well educated and could read and speak 6 different languages, but he didn't share that learning with us. So my brothers and I had quite a time as young men on the river, hunting wild turkeys, deer, and other fowl, fishing, racing ponies, until I was taken in by one of those beautiful Bales sisters across the river. Mary Bales ended my holiday and made me promise to do something besides hunting and fishing. So I promised her that I would make a living for us. We married in 1783. We Ice brothers really liked those Bales sisters, and 3 of us married 3 sisters. The Bales Cemetery can still be visited in the neighborhood of Harewood, overlooking Cheat Lake. I started operating a ferry across the Cheat River. It really took off, and our little town became known as Ices Ferry. George Washington himself came to cross the river on my ferry in 1784. He had a notion about building a canal from the Potomac to the Monongahela, and he asked my opinion about the feasibility of such a venture. I did not know who this big, valiant man was, and I responded to him, "Stranger, you are a mighty fine-looking man, but you or no other man is fine enough looking to build a canal across these mountains." There's also a good story that the present Andy Ice has heard about Zach Morgan and me. We had caught a Tory that was plotting to get rid of Colonel Morgan. Folks thought he needed to get upriver to Pittsburgh to stand trial, even though Colonel Morgan knew him to be quite guilty. Now, Zach loaded that prisoner on my ferry, and we had barely started across when he accidentally fell off my boat and drowned. No trial needed. I could be wrong, but he might have had boot prints on his back. Ices Ferry was a growing, prosperous town. We had good clothes for those times, made of tanned deer hides and woven wool, topped by fur caps. We lived in log houses with double chimneys, glass windows, and board sawed at the local sawmill. There were men at the ferry who could split as straight a slab as the old mill could saw. The houses had puncheon floors split out of logs. We had apples and peaches aplenty and lots of good crops raised, as Daddy had cleared a lot of the 400 acres that he owned. I operated the ferry across the river for several years and then leased it to others who, all in all, kept it going for 100 years, even after I left the area. Even though Daddy Ice thought that we had as good a home as there was in America, my brothers and I decided that we needed more space to live and grow our families away from Ices Ferry. So after many years in the Cheat, Daddy Ice helped us get 200 acres each on Buffalo Creek in Marion County, nearest now as what is now Barrackville. Daddy Ice, known as the father of the Ice family in America, stayed on at Ices Ferry and died in 1790 at the age of about 114. He is buried on our island under what is now Cheat Lake. Ices Ferry prospered for decades, building on the growing iron industry that peaked from 1845 to 1848. The Cheat River played an important part in supporting this industry, as iron ore was often loaded onto boats near Quarry Run, floated to the Monongahela River, and on to cities as far away as New Orleans. We had iron furnaces, a keg and nail factory, and a railway along the Cheat at one time. In a few years, however, our iron industry fell to the competition up north, and our town, once bigger than nearby Morgantown, just withered away. My dear wife Mary died in 1822, and I married Sarah Hudson. Soon after that, my son Jesse decided he'd had enough of plowing hillsides, and he wanted to find flat land. So my sons Jesse and Fred loaded up their families and me on a flatboat. We headed to Pittsburgh, then down the Ohio, and off to Indiana. We liked Indiana, and our families stayed. I even served as sheriff a couple years in Morgantown, Indiana. My son Abraham stayed on Buffalo Creek and married brother Adam's daughter Phoebe, his double first cousin. I told you we really love those Bales women. The present Andy Ice is descended from Abraham and Phoebe, my son and niece. Many Ices remained in the Barrickville area and are still in the surrounding areas today. I got that soldier pension that I applied for in 1832 while I was living in Indiana. The fine DAR ladies of Henry County, Indiana, even erected a statue in my honor for America's 130th birthday. I died in 1848 in my 92nd year, and the Indiana Courier in Newcastle, Indiana, published my obituary. They gave this tribute. He took an active part in one revolutionary struggle and lived to enjoy the blessings of a Republican form of government obtained by the patriots of that day, till nearly all of his compatriots in arms have been called to sleep the sleep of death. At his request, he was buried in honors of war. The present Andy Ice, along with her sisters Susie and Robin, and their families, buried a time capsule at the base of Daddy Ice's millstones when they were reset alongside the new Ices Ferry Bridge in 2012. They enclosed historical papers as well as a letter to future generations that may open the time capsule. The letter closes with this message: "Our people were of pioneer stock. We were here in the 1700s and 1800s to blaze a path across the mountains when few dared, to fight for American freedom, to work to build families and communities, and to honor God. Our family has continued for many decades through the 1900s and 2000s to honor God, cherish family ties, work hard to support one another, and proudly salute and serve the American flag. We are thrilled that the love of family, heritage, and America still exists. These are treasures beyond value." Thank you.
Questions and answers.
Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Where is Ices Ferry located right now? I've read that it's located beneath the I-68 bridge. Is that about accurate, or is it?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. And there's if you've gone across the new Ices Ferry Bridge, that crosses the path that Andrew Ice would have crossed with his ferry from the north side to the south side of the river. And there's a marker there
Right.
that we did get replaced. We had to, my nephew Jesse is here, and he had to contact the state road. We even had a little bit of a battle to get that put back in place. And finally, the historical marker also is marking the bridge, and it denotes the birthplace of Adam, also known as David Adam Ice, cited as the first white child born west of the Alleghenies.
And the thing about it is that the ferry and the island is more under the new Ices Ferry Bridge. It didn't go down as far as the interstate bridge.
Okay. And this is my husband, Fred, who has lived on Cheat Lake for 60 years. He's quite familiar with the lake and the river.
What year did the ferry cease operating?
You know, I don't know that for certain.
I think it was in like they built the bridge around 1920 or something
Yeah.
like that.
So it really went on in operation. There was something going on, taking people across the river till the bridge went
And
in.
the Ice family still managed it?
No, no. Andrew Ice leased it off to other people. When he left, and they moved to Barrackville.
Well, the first Ices Ferry Bridge was built in 1900s, so ferry service ceased at that time,
That's it.
and then that bridge was wrecked by an ice flow.
Yes.
And
Before they put in the-
2 years between the wreck of the old bridge and the new bridge being constructed, the ferry service resumed.
Okay. Well, thank you. Anybody else have any other discussion points or questions?
I have another question. West Virginia history was taught by Donna Roberts that I had as a teacher. And I recall that she had a photo and she brought in Delegate Robert Dinsmore as a guest speaker. But one of the things they talked about was when the lake was created, that the flooding of the town that existed there, she told us that the structures remained and the trees remained and all of that it was never leveled and all that, I guess of course it would have deteriorated with time. But people, when they were diving and swimming, if they got in the wrong places, could have gotten, I mean, if they went deep enough, I guess.
I've heard the same thing.
Yeah.
And I knew someone several years ago who said his grandfather or great-grandfather had a house along the river, and he and one of my coworkers went diving to get the big old stone mantle out of that home and brought it up to put it in their new home.
And then the other thing I heard, and I don't know if you know, old timers always said that the reason that it was called Cheat and Cheat River was because it cheated people out of their lives, that when they would go swimming for recreational purposes or whatever, that a lot of people lost their lives either by accident or whatever circumstance, and that there was some connection with that.
I think it was also named that by the Indians before before the white man ever came this way. And one thing I had already written my talk, but it was pointed out too, as the Ices came over from Hampshire County, they also settled at Dunker's Bottom along the Cheat. They followed the Cheat to get to the Montague County air part of it, but they were at Dunker's Bottom, and my sister lives right there.
Where's
they were.
Dunker's Bottom?
Preston Country Club.
Okay.
And so the Ices have been there, and we live there, and the Ices have been there at the Cheat, and Fred and I live there, so somehow we aren't be able to get very far from home.
When the dam was built and the lake was formed, its name is Lake Lynn.
Yeah, officially Lake Lynn. Anybody else? Well, my friends the Mossers are here, and when I was talking about Andy Ice and how he just hunted turkeys and raced ponies and things, did it remind you of anybody?
Yeah, I have a recollection.
Because that's what Fred did till his Mary Bales made him settle down. That would be I. Anybody else? Thank you very much for coming out today. This has been just an exercise of joy for me, and I feel very connected now to my late great grandfather, Andy Ice. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Pamela Ball. She is director of the museum, chairman of our board, and like to let her take the floor.
Yes, thank you for coming today. We have a wonderful exhibit if you haven't gone through the room to look at it. Morgantown Waterways, and it examines the 3 bodies of water in this area, and really involves a lot involving in the environmental issues and recreation and industry. The person that's worked very hard on it for the last year is Neil Burton, and he's been with us for about 1.5 years now. And a good bit of that time he's spent researching those bodies of water. I wrote a grant to the Mon County Commission, and it was funded for this to happen. So we hope that you enjoy it today, and we'll tell other people about it because it will be up for a while. So thank you again for coming, and would you like to say something?
I studied environmental history, and when I came to this area, I moved here very recently, it paralleled a lot of the things that I was studying. You know, wherever you have a great waterway like the Mon, it becomes the highway of all commerce, ancient and present, and everything kind of forms around it. And so it was a great opportunity to just look at Morgantown through the lens of environmental history. So I really enjoyed putting it together.
Thanks. And if you had questions when you looked, or if you're going to look, please ask Neil. I know some of it, but not all of it.
And I won't know that much of it either, but I'll point you in the right direction.
Okay, thanks a lot for coming.
Could I say that we have a website, and I will be posting this video along with 60 other videos that we have on the website at morgantownhistorymuseum.org. And you click on the YouTube thing, and it'll take you to YouTube, and there's all kind of videos of past events that we've had. And we also have a Facebook page.
And we also have the beginnings of our project that we started last year called Morgantown Memories. You can view those videos on YouTube or on our website or on our Facebook page. And so far, the Video Movie Committee has interviewed me at length about the 25 years it's taken me to get to this point with the museum effort. It's been a long haul, but the video is very good. Someone who's worked with videos for a long time has produced it. We also, After Mine was Charlene Marshall's, and most of you know Charlene Marshall or know who she is. She worked initially at Sterling Fawcett and was probably either one of very few African Americans that worked there back in that early time frame. And she progressed to the point where she was the president of the labor union there at Sterling. And that in of itself back then was pretty unusual. But that sort of spoke to what eventually would happen with her. She ended up being mayor of Morgantown, and she also went on to be a House of Delegates member, so her story is very unusual. But she's the second film that we have. We hope to have fairly soon, it's not all worked out yet, because it is completed now, an event where the public's involved and invited to view that film of Charlene. So you might want to look out for that. And when that happens, we will put it out there quite a bit. We haven't decided who the next candidate will be for the next film. We're still working on deciding that. There's a lot of interesting people around here, so it's not an easy chore. And you also, part of what you think about when you're going to do a film, and you have so many people and just so much you can do, is that the person is older and what they know might disappear. If you look at that sign I put out right there, when the elderly die, a library is lost. Volumes of wisdom and knowledge are gone. And that is why we're doing that in a nutshell. So if you have any suggestions as to someone who would fill the bill of possible film as they're funded, please let us know. Yeah, Patricia?
Well, I just wanted to mention that the first couple of films were done for free, basically, because it's a good cause. But we are looking for sponsorship for future films.
Yes, we
In
are
case you know
working
anybody who
currently on that.
sponsors things.
Okay, any other comments or questions from anyone? Thank you again for coming, and don't miss the opportunity to look at the exhibit. It's quite nice. Very nice visually. We've had a lot of exhibits, and I've done exhibit work going back 25 years in different places and venues. But this one, I think it's a visual thing. It's very visually interesting to me. It just really stands out. Okay, thanks again.